IDEM is once again back taking up a contemporary issue for discussion. And today we are discussing the renaming or the changing of the Indian Penal Code and the judicial system, the changes, the massive changes that have been brought to the Indian judicial system. And on our panel, we have Ravinder Kumar ji. He's a lawyer of the Supreme Court and a social activist, and he's a president of the Rashtriya Mukthi Morcha. Then on the panel, we have Kalanidhi Veerasamy. He is a member of the Loksabha representing Dravida Munneta Kazhagam. Finally, the third person on the panel is Thulasi K. Raj. She is a lawyer at the Supreme Court. So welcome to all of you. So we will start with Kalanidhi ji. The bills that are presented by the Home Minister the last day they are going to have a huge impact in the judicial system, because it has been brought in with the claim that this colonial legacy is being overhauled. But how far it is going to be effective? So the DMK has already flagged the issue of using language, Hindi as a predominant language in this judicial system. So what is your take on that? You have been there, you are the part of the Lok Sabha. So you have been there when the bills were introduced. So we'll start from you, Kalanidhi ji. What is the impact going to be?
Greetings to everyone. No, technically when this bill was brought in, on that day it was the last day of Parliament, and all the opposition members had staged a walkout because the speech delivered by the Honorable Prime Minister was, if you want to summarize it, you should. My sentiments are reflected by the Telegraph, where they had said that it was blah 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 for about 4 columns. So that was basically the whole speech. And after we staged a walkout, some of us happened to be hanging out in the lobby over there. And at that point in time, one of the persons from the Secretary General's office, he came to us and he said that these 3 laws were being brought in. So we asked for a copy of this, and so I went in to get a copy of this, and then I saw that it was all the Indian Penal Code, the criminal CRPC, and the Indian Evidence Act. All these things, the names were changed into something Bharatiya. So I'm yet to learn the names. Because in Tamil Nadu we are not very familiar with the Hindi terminologies which they have given.
Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita will replace Indian Penal Code.
Yeah, I just remember the captions for that. BNSS and BSS or some.
Okay.
So that's how I tend to remember them. And see, the thing is, they have made a lot of alterations, and I had a discussion with a few of my lawyer friends, and they were talking about the sedition law has been taken off, and there are some other laws which are even more, draconian have been brought in. So they have brought in a lot of laws. But one thing I want to highlight over here is the laws are as good as the lawmakers of the country. So if you look at the laws which they have brought in laws which say that crimes against women will be punishable by death. But you have to understand that this is the same government, the same double-engine sarkar which they so proudly claim. I would say that more than a double-engine sarkar, I will call this a double-barrel sarkar which is shooting down the people. So if you look at Gujarat, there was a woman who was brutally raped, her family members murdered, and these people were sentenced to life. And this double-engine or double-barrel sarkar was the one which released those 9 accused. Those who were not accused, they were convicted. They were convicted and they were prematurely released, and they were welcomed with garlands and sweets by the ruling dispensations alliances. So it goes to show, this goes to show that these people, they do all these kind of gimmickry to show that they are making a change in the law, and to show as if that they are the custodians of the law, when actually they are the ones who are destroying all the constitutional authorities and the bodies. And probably I would even go as far as to say that they are murdering the democracy and constitution over here.
So what Kalanidhi ji, you have pointed out is the government has been acting in a very hasty manner while replacing a 163-year-old law that we are having in our country.
Yeah, yes.
Which definitely needs to be rewritten. But there should be a procedure. There should be the way it's done. It should be an inclusive discussion, which did not happen, is what you have said.
No, we would actually request the government in this particular case, when you're talking about this Criminal Penal Code, IPC, and the Evidence Act, I think we need a larger discussion and debate. See, similarly, they have already floated this idea of uniform civil code. See, we are saying first you come out with a draft of what you are planning. So now these three bills, they have come out with a bill. So I think this bill should be taken up for discussions and debate by judges, by lawyers, by even the common people, the groups of people, various classes of people. And after due process, I feel that due deliberations, see, we object to the change in the name to this Bharatiya, whatever, I mean, like whatever the terminology. And we would request that the terminology be retained. See, there is no point in, I don't know whether they have changed this because they are against this concept of this alliance, which is recently formed, which is called as India. And whether this is against this principle of this opposition's alliance name. And we really wonder whether they are hateful of this terminology of India because of this, and why it has to be changed into some other new thing. So we request that the name should be retained, and this is our preliminary, I mean, like our legal team and our group of MPs, all of us will deliberate after going through the bills thoroughly, and then we would come up with further suggestions. But I feel that a larger debate and suggestions needs, and this needs a debate for about 2 or 3 years before these bills are brought into us.
Okay, because with the elections just less than 1 year away, how practical it's going to be is the main question. Ravinder ji, are you still online? I think we lost him.
Yes.
Can you switch on the camera, please? The camera is switched off.
Camera, there is some. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So yeah. So I hope you were listening to what Kalanidhi ji was saying. So we are in the process of replacing a 163-year-old legal system, judicial system. The thing that we need to keep in mind is we have a backlog of 50 million cases. So the new Samhidas, be it the Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita or the Bharatiya Nagarik Suraksha Samhita or the Bharatiya Sakshya Bill, are they capable of speeding up the dispensation of justice? Because from the preliminary, when reading through the available information, it seems that the law is becoming more punitive, more retributive than reformative, as we used to be, as the Indian Penal Code used to be. So, do you think that this change is going to be effective? Because you have been at the forefront of battle against corruption.
I want to make a very different point. That point is that both houses, is Loksabha and Rajya Sabha, had been made redundant by the Speaker of Lok Sabha and Chairman of Rajya Sabha intentionally. I have written a letter on 25th July to both the gentlemen, the Speaker of the Lok Sabha and Chairman of Rajya Sabha, that opposition is demanding a debate under Rule 267 in Rajya Sabha and under Rule 56 in Lok Sabha regarding Meghalaya incidents and incidents in Manipur. Both the presiding officer of both the houses were aware about the parliamentary procedure. There is one thing which is known to everybody, even myself, that whenever a matter is sub judice before a court, and it is not only any court, but it is before the Supreme Court. on 20th of July, Supreme Court has issued suo motu notice of this incident in Manipur, and this event is known to these people, and they can say simply that under rules and procedure of Lok Sabha, these issues cannot be raised in both the houses. But they intentionally, government do not want that the house should proceed, and that's why they wasted the precious time of both the houses. And in the back door of this scenario, they introduced so many bills which they wanted to be passed without the support or discussion of the opposition, and that is their modus operandi. And I have wrote letter to even the President of India, to the CJI, and to the Prime Minister, that you are killing the procedure of the parliamentary proceeding of both the houses. So please keep this in mind. And being a vigilant citizen, everyone should know that it was the government of the day, Modi government, and with the help of Speaker and Chairman of both the houses, they have killed the time of the Parliament, and they used this modus operandi to pass their various bills, including the bill of this Indian Penal Code, CRPC, and Evidence Act. And their modus operandi is that they introduce bill, and in the back of the opposition, and after passing of the bill, they will say that it is a democratically passed bill, and it should be ruled in the country. So that's why I am very much against, and I made letter to these two gentlemen that you are killing the democracy, and it is very wild allegation which I am leveling, that Speaker and Chairman of Rajya Sabha both are killing the procedure of Parliament. They are either not aware or they are intentionally doing this just to curtail the right of the citizen to know what transpire in houses whenever there is a bill is passing. Because we know that Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, they are the lawmakers, they made the law. But without discussion, if they are passing a bill or making it a law in an act, it is a wastage of taxpayers' money, and it is a mockery of our Indian democracy.
Thank you. So we will come back to that procedure discrepancies that that are being highlighted during the passing of the bill. I will go to Thulasi now because Kalanidhi he brought out the this topic of sedition law being repealed, but then sedition has been replaced by it's submersive. So in a way, the scope has been widened, or is it going to be effective? That's one question. Second thing, there have been flagging of issues like the police have been given more power in this. For example, the remand period have been extended from 15 to 60 to 90 days. So again, it brings us back to the saying which Kalanidhi said, the rule is as good as the ruler. So your comment on that from the lawyer perspective, Thulasi.
Yes, yeah, absolutely disappointed with the manner and the content, the manner in which the new laws are introduced. To begin with, the procedural violations, as has already been brought forth, absolutely no consultation and no discussion and no deliberation, and this is not the way in which new legislations are supposed to be introduced in a parliamentary democracy. Absolute disregard for opposition and other members of the parliament. And it is merely because it is a majority government that is ruling, that doesn't mean whatever the majority wants, they will actually implement it without having any concern for what the other persons have to say, or without taking into consideration the views of the public at large or the other MPs or the opposition. So that is, I think all of us are in a state of disbelief that the things have degenerated to such an extent that there is absolutely no oppositional respect for this government. Now, as far as your question is concerned regarding sedition, also again there are problems, since as all of us are aware, the challenge to the constitutionality of the sedition law is pending before the Supreme Court, and at the time when the court was considering it, the Supreme Court, the government through its lawyer essentially said that we are reconsidering having sedition law in the book, and we are making some changes to it, or we are considering to just take it off altogether. And that is why an interim order was issued by the courts, practically staying or keeping in abeyance the implementation of the law. But what has now come into being is that it is practically a case of old wine in new bottle, where they expand the various expand the scope of the law by using very wide words, very broad words that are amenable to whatever interpretation one wants to take. And they have given liberty to interpret it in such a way that the interpreter pleases. And this is very problematic, especially in terms of criminal law, because criminal law is supposed to be and expected to be drafted as narrowly as possible, as rigid as possible, so that there is no possibility of another interpretation which will enable, arrest and detention of persons who are not liable to suffer that predicament. And that is in addition to that problem, there is also this issue of the new laws being very carelessly drafted. If you look at the explanation of the sedition law, you will see that the explanation is incomplete. And we're talking about the legislation that is introduced in the highest parliamentary forum of this country, wherein no care is taken to at least proofread the explanation to make it a complete sentence. We see the kind of carelessness that's been put into. So I think that in totality, one can call these like so-called reforms essentially populist. And that is why the Home Minister, as well as the other supporters of the government, say that we have added a lot of provisions to increase the punishment and so on and so forth, whereas they've not really done anything as far as the content is concerned. As far as the substantive content is concerned, things have only been made worse, in my opinion, and not any better.
Okay, so that brings us back to, we keep coming back to the procedural lapses that have been made. So Kalanidhi, what happened to the before presenting such a major reform, major law, it has to go through a standing committee, right? So was that done in this case?
Now, see, the thing is, even during one of my parliament speeches, I had brought to the attention of this government that the Honorable Supreme Court Chief Justice, the former CJI, Mr. Ramana, in one of his observations, he had made a statement saying that the laws are being passed in Parliament without due debate or discourse, where it is creating confusion for the judiciary. I mean, so he has made that statement, and I have reiterated his statement in the Parliament. And if you see, I mean, if you look at the BJP government, they have always been people who have been trying to please the population. I mean, like a populistic attitude where, be it the demonetization or be it the way the GST was brought in. I mean, the only things that this government has done, whatever they claim that they have done, has always been a disaster. I mean, like even to the extent where the Honorable Prime Minister went abroad and brought some cheetahs from abroad. Even at that time, I mean, I was raising issues like, see, or geologically or geographically, or relocating some animals. And I mean, like, you have to understand, like, you cannot, I mean, it's like bringing an Eskimo and asking him to stay in Chennai, Tamil Nadu, where the weather is going to be killing it. So, and I think several of those cheetahs are also dead, I mean, like, subject to correction. But this government has been always, I mean, like, even when they brought in the farm laws, despite, I mean, like, millions of farmers going on a strike where for almost a year, this government did not heed them. And the moment when there was election which was forthcoming and they found that this is going to have a negative impact on them, then they withdraw this law. So I feel that the government should listen to people. I mean, like, the whole purpose of a government is to listen to people, find out what their requirements are. And the BJP, their attitude of trying to make this as a Hindutva nation, where they want to say that all people are the same, and trying to bring laws where it is applicable throughout the country. I mean, there are so many differences. I mean, like, be it Tamil Nadu, be it Kerala, be it Northeast, be it West Bengal or Maharashtra. I mean, see, each people have their own ethnicity, their own identity, and they have so much of differences culturally. There are so many differences amongst us. And what makes this country a beautiful nation or a fantastic nation is because of the unity that we have. See, the moment when I step out of the country, I think that is the only time when you need to speak about a nation. See, sitting within India and to say that whether are you an Indian or not, because if you look at, I mean, if you are going to ask me, I will say I am from Chennai. I will first say I am a Tamil. I'm from Chennai. I mean, like within Tamil Nadu, if you ask, people have their own pride about being from Madurai or from Coimbatore. They have their own pride. But when you talk about a state, then we say that we are all Tamils. I mean, like we'll be, when there is a differences of opinion with, say, another neighboring state or some other state, or voicing our opinion regarding our rights, then we become Tamils. But the moment when it shifts where it's about a problem where it is regarding a nation, when there is an incursion from China or Pakistan, then we say that we are Indians. So that is the only moment when you are talking about a nation. But here they are trying to talk about, they bring in certain ideologies and say that if you are not conforming to this, then you are an anti-national. I mean, like, this is setting a narrative where they are trying to make it look as if anybody who goes against their principles or their ideologies are all anti-national, which is totally unacceptable. And this sedition laws, and the way they have brought in these new laws, there are some phrases, I mean, like, we subject to correction, where some of my lawyer friends have said that even if you are going to, instead of saying that against the government, they are talking about anybody acting against the nation. So what is this nation, and who defines what this nation is? And if I'm going to raise my voice against some kind of an oppressive attitude brought in by this government, do I become an anti-national? So they have started thrusting these ideas of anti-nationalism instead of taking out this rule about the sedition laws. So instead of sedition, now they are talking about anti-nationals. So this is actually a very dangerous precedent, and I find that we need to be a lot more, I mean, careful about how we are going to be bringing this in, and especially with the coming elections, and like so many people are. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. So many people are worried about, because the BJP has only one trick up their sleeve, because they usually have two. One is driving up the national sentiment, where they will create a situation where as if they are fighting against Pakistan or China. And right now they cannot do that. And so now the only agenda left for them is the Hindutva agenda, where we see Haryana burning, because that is adjacent to Rajasthan, and they are trying to focus on the Rajasthan MLA elections, which are going to be happening over there. And the fear is that this kind of riots and religious violences will be unleashed in major parts of the country in the name of this opening of this Ram temple and this Gyanvapi. And I mean, like, it is actually a deplorable state of affairs that Gyanvapi issue is being raised when there is a Supreme Court order which says that after post 1991, any religious place will not be subjected to scrutiny or any kind of change, which was established prior to 1947. So with all this happening, and in fact, when Madam Thulasi was mentioning about majority of the BJP, I would actually like to say that a lot of the BJP MPs are unhappy about the way the things are happening over here right now. But the only problem is when they are given a whip, when they are issued a whip, they have no choice but to follow whatever the instructions are, or they forfeit their, MPC. So I think probably if there is any other bill which is brought during winter session or during the interim budget session, I feel that there probably can be a lot of dissident MP voices which can be heard from the BJP themselves. Because I have seen personally that a lot of ministers and BJP MPs, they are towing the line because they have no other choice. So in fact, several of them have said that they probably will not be contesting the forthcoming elections because they do not want to be seen as a party which is, being a party to this kind of a party where they are doing such atrocious and which they find it difficult to accept.
Okay, so we might get disconnected in 10 minutes. So in case we get connected, you can connect in the same.
We will reconnect. Yeah.
Connected.
Yes.
Thank you, Kalanidhi. These laws that have been presented in the Loksabha, in the upper houses, it's going to be debated for long because there has been discrepancies flagged against it. My question to Ravinder ji, you are a crusader against corruption and the flaws in the system. The new laws, as they have been proposed, they are being termed as a tool in the arms of the government to silence the opponents. So, do you really get a feeling of that?
Actually, in India, right now, if I have to say, I will say that now India is becoming a police state. Rather, it's a democratic republic, which we have enshrined when we have enacted our constitution. Day by day, every government has put a draconian law in his hand, and they are creating civil liberties at the peril of the government, and they are making India as a police state. Police want to know everything. They lodge false cases, and that's why we saw that even the government of the day has not even faith on the Chief Justice of India when they are putting an amendment in the ruling of our Supreme Court regarding the selection of election commissioner. They want that the Chief Justice of India should be replaced by a member of a cabinet of any government, and which shows that they have no regard for the court, they have no regard for the highest post of the Chief Justice of India, and they have no regard for civil liberties. So we can understand that by enacting all these acts, they are just want to gather more and more power in their hands, and they are making democracy only a mock word, and it is not. In reality, we are heading for a liberal society, democratic society, intelligent society, and rational society.
So, Thulasi ji, do you concur with what Ravinder ji has said? Because as I have mentioned in the beginning of the discussion, that what we have is the what do you call the huge backlog of cases. And another thing that is being highlighted is nearly 77% of the prisoners right now are under trials. So,
Yes.
the new reforms going to make any change on that?
So the thing is that since they have reformed or changed the penal laws and the procedural law and the evidence law, so essentially substantive laws have been changed and procedural laws in terms of in terms of arrest, in terms of investigation, etc., have been changed. There is not much scope for addressing judicial reforms as such, because that also comes under a slightly different area of the law in terms of judicial delay and pendency of cases and under trial prisoners and so on and so forth. So for that, we need a major revamping of the legal framework in terms of infrastructural and other aspects, and we need judicial reforms to sort of have some positive impact in terms of the number of under trials, in order to reduce the number of under trials and to have speedy disposal of cases. As far as the present so-called reforms are concerned, I would think that the new laws are mainly aimed at certain populist measures. So I think the government wants to say something like, look at what we are doing for women, since we are increasing the punishment for a gang rape, for instance. So the question is, merely by increasing punishments for certain offenses which are against women according to our penal code, whether women's safety can be ensured, or whether that does anything at all to help Indian women from being victims of sexual assault or being victims of assault, is the primary question. And to that question, I think it is wrong to say that the present new sort of laws are helpful in any way. Because all these reforms, if you look at all these so-called recommendations, are populist in the sense that they say that we want to increase the punishment and that is how we seek to protect. But we live in a society that is even now very patriarchal, and there are certain norms and tendencies in the society which lead to sexist norms and sexist ways of behavior, which have some role to play in terms of sexual assault. So these, without really looking at or examining the underlying causes, to say that we have increased the punishment and that alone will now help to protect Indian women from assault or from sexual assault, I don't think is a very, very intelligent move by this government. And there is also, of course, this case of naming the laws in Hindi, which I think was touched upon once in this discussion. I think this also goes against Article 348 of the Indian Constitution, which says that the language which shall be used in the Supreme Court, in the High Court, and all the acts and bills shall be in English language. It seems it is without noticing this provision that the names have been changed. Of course, the names are in English language if you look at the word, but of course, they are Hindi words which are used. And this again is undemocratic and without really considering that a lot of Indian states do not engage with the Hindi language. And this tendency of having one language, one country, is not in tune with the diversity that we have in terms of language, in terms of culture, in terms of various other aspects. It's just a very majoritarian, very authoritarian, I would think, move from the government, which also is unhelpful in terms of any judicial reform measurement as well.
Okay, from the looks of it, this is not in a very democratic spirit that these bills have been presented before the parliament. So, Kalanidhi, what are the strategies that are being planned to counter this narrative?
I mean, see, whatever we do, our party has already, our Honorable Chief Minister has already raised his objection, and he has written saying that he is opposed, the Tamil Nadu government is opposed to this new laws which are brought in, especially the terminology being changed, and I mean the title of the law being changed. And the strategy, what we need to do is next till the Parliament convenes, we cannot do anything through the Parliament or in the Parliament. And what our Honorable Chief Minister has already insisted that there should be adequate debate about these bills before they are brought into Parliament for even discussion. And if you're talking about the strategy of the India alliance, opposition alliance for the future, see, the problem now that what we are facing is, we are having a person who is an anti-corruption activist. But the moment when we talk about corruption, everybody talks only about the corruption of economic corruption. And we know that it is a bad thing. Corruption in any form is bad. But right now, the biggest problem which is facing this country is corruption of your thoughts and corruption of your mind, where you are encouraging people to have a kind of a religious superiority and to have a moral superiority, where people are taking that anybody who belongs to a religion or a class which is different from mine are lesser than. So they do not see them as equals. Sadly, what I see the BJP doing is trying to bring out those animals out and letting them loose but not realizing that this is going to affect people of their own religion also. When you see this violences which are happening in Haryana, it's very disturbing because typically, like what the MP had said, I don't know whether they have this kind of discussions where they kind of educate the RSS crowd and the BJP crowd to do this, because they have targeted, I consider that this is a state-sponsored terrorism where the government goes and breaks down business houses and residences belonging to a particular community with an alleged claim that this is in government land. And with so many decades of existence, they were not able to see that. But the moment elections are coming up, they are able to identify these and take action against hundreds, if not thousands of them. Is very scary. And the similar thing is happening in Madhya Pradesh. And I don't think it is too far before we can see something like this happening in UP and most other states, where they are trying to incite this kind of a religious hatred, not realizing that this is going to be affecting the Hindus as well.
So inclusiveness is not the main strength of the bills that have been produced right now. So we are still in the initial stage. The bills have just been introduced, presented before that.
Yes.
Now there will be lots and lots of discussions going on. So we'll keep coming back to this. So thank you. Kalanidhi ji. Thank you, Ravinder ji.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And thank you, Thulasi ji, for joining us. We will come back to this topic and discuss as things evolve. Thank you all.